Academy's leadership found themselves fielding inquiries from governments across dozens of star systems, all wanting to understand how a mixed-species team had outperformed traditionally dominant military forces. Commander Thixara called Marcus and Vraktar to her office 3 days after the war games concluded. The meeting was informal, but the implications were significant. Changes to Academy training doctrine rarely happened quickly, but the results achieved by the study group were too impressive to ignore. "Cadets," Commander Thixara began, her blue-scaled features showing approval. "Your collaborative approach has generated considerable interest among Academy leadership and external military commands. We would like to implement elements of your training methodology into the standard curriculum." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Recognition and official attention were things he had learned to avoid during his frontier upbringing. "Commander, the techniques aren't really mine. Everyone in the group contributed equally to developing our approaches." Vraktar nodded in agreement, his amber eyes reflecting newfound respect for collaborative achievement over individual glory. "The human speaks truth, Commander. Our success came from combining perspectives, not from any single species' superiority." Commander Thixara's expression showed amusement at their modesty. "Nevertheless, the initiative came from your interaction, and the leadership came from your partnership. The Academy would like to formalize your study group as an experimental training program available to selected cadets from all species." The proposal represented everything Marcus had hoped to avoid: official recognition, formal authority, and the kind of attention that made him a target for those who resented change. But he also recognized the opportunity to help other students avoid the isolation and misunderstanding he had experienced. "What would be required of us?" Marcus asked. "You would continue your regular studies while serving as peer instructors for the experimental program. Selected cadets from each incoming class would have the opportunity to participate in collaborative training exercises based on your methodologies." Vraktar leaned forward, his scarred features showing interest. "This could help bridge gaps between species that have traditionally viewed each other as competitors rather than potential allies." Over the following weeks, the experimental program took shape. Marcus found himself working with Academy instructors to document the techniques and principles that had made their study group successful. The process forced him to articulate concepts that had been intuitive, translating frontier survival wisdom into formal military doctrine. The first group of participants included cadets who had struggled with traditional training methods as well as high achievers who wanted to push beyond conventional limitations. The diversity was intentional, designed to test whether the collaborative approach could benefit students across the spectrum of ability and background. Vraktar proved to be an exceptional co-instructor, his warrior background providing credibility with cadets from martial species, while his personal transformation demonstrated the value of intellectual flexibility. The combination of human adaptability and Zentorian strength became a powerful symbol of what interspecies cooperation could achieve. The program's success was measured not just in improved test scores and training performance, but in the relationships that formed between traditionally antagonistic species. Cadets who had viewed each other with suspicion or disdain began developing genuine friendships based on mutual respect and shared achievement. Marcus's original study group members became the program's core instructors, each bringing their unique perspectives to help new participants understand the value of diversity in tactical thinking. The crystalline beings taught energy manipulation to species that had never considered such applications. Aquatic cadets helped others develop three-dimensional thinking skills. Insectoid races shared coordination techniques that enhanced team effectiveness. As the program expanded, Marcus found himself reflecting on how much had changed since his quiet arrival at the Academy. He had come seeking nothing more than a quality education and the chance to serve in galactic defense forces. Instead, he had become instrumental in changing how the galaxy's military elite thought about cooperation and tactical innovation. The transformation in Vraktar was equally remarkable. The proud Zentorian warrior had evolved from someone who viewed other species as inherently inferior to a leader who actively sought to learn from anyone who could offer valuable insights. His scars still told stories of individual combat prowess, but his actions now demonstrated understanding that true strength came from unified effort. During the Academy's graduation ceremony at the end of their training cycle, Marcus and Vraktar stood together as representatives of their experimental program. The success of their collaborative approach had been so significant that it was being implemented across the entire Academy system, with plans to extend it to active military units throughout the galaxy. Commander Thixara addressed the graduating class with words that would have been impossible before Marcus's arrival. The future of galactic defense lies not in the dominance of any single species, but in our ability to combine our diverse strengths into something greater than the sum of our parts. The graduates of this experimental program have demonstrated that cooperation and mutual respect produce capabilities that no single approach can achieve. As Marcus received his commission as a lieutenant in the Galactic Defense Forces, he realized that his quiet intention to simply survive his academy experience had instead helped reshape how the galaxy approached military cooperation. The frontier survival skills that had seemed unremarkable to him had proven revolutionary to species that had never faced the challenges of human existence. Vraktar, receiving his own commission, approached Marcus after the ceremony with an expression of genuine gratitude. "My friend," the Zentaurian said, using a term of respect that carried deep meaning in his culture, "you have taught me that true strength comes not from conquering others, but from helping them become stronger themselves." Marcus smiled, thinking of the mining colony where he had learned that survival depended on everyone working together regardless of their differences. "That's not a human concept, Vraktar. That's just common sense when you're facing challenges bigger than any individual can handle alone." As the two friends prepared to depart for their first assignments with the Galactic Defense Forces, they carried with them the knowledge that they had been part of something historic. The galaxy was changing, becoming a place where diversity was viewed as strength rather than division, where cooperation was valued over competition. The quiet human from the frontier and the proud Zentaurian warrior had discovered that their greatest victory wasn't defeating each other, but learning to combine their strengths in service of something larger than themselves. In a galaxy full of diverse species and complex challenges, that lesson would prove more valuable than any individual achievement. Their story became part of Academy legend, told to new cadets as an example of how assumptions could be dangerous, how strength came in unexpected forms, and how the greatest victories were often achieved not through conquest, but through understanding. And in the vast expanse of space where countless species worked together to defend their shared civilization, the principles they had discovered continued to create new possibilities for cooperation and mutual success. The human who had been mocked for his supposed weakness had instead revealed humanity's greatest strength, the ability to bring out the best in others while adapting to challenges that would break more rigid approaches. It was a lesson that would reshape military doctrine across the galaxy and prove that sometimes the most powerful warriors were those who fought not to defeat their enemies, but to understand them. First contact with the self-proclaimed gods. The starship emerged from the void like a living dream made of crystalline light. Its surface rippled with colors that had no names in human language, shifting between silver and gold with traces of something that looked like liquid starlight. The vessel was massive, easily 10 times the size of anything humanity had ever built, and it moved through space with the grace of a creature born among the stars. Captain Rachel Morrison stood on the bridge of the research vessel Pioneer's Dream, watching the alien ship approach through the main view screen. Her crew of 43 scientists and explorers had been conducting routine surveys in the Kepler 442 system when their sensors detected the approaching vessel. This was it. This was the moment humanity had dreamed of and feared for generations. First contact with an alien civilization. The ship's chief scientist, Dr. James Fletcher, was practically vibrating with excitement as he studied the sensor readings. The energy signatures were unlike anything in human databases. The propulsion system seemed to bend space around the vessel rather than pushing through it. Most fascinating of all, the ship appeared to be generating its own gravity field, creating a pocket of normal space-time wherever it traveled. Rachel had been a starship captain for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. She was about to make first contact with beings from another world. The weight of representing all of humanity pressed down on her shoulders like a physical thing. Every decision she made in the next few hours could determine the future relationship between two species. The communication array crackled to life without any input from the human crew. Somehow the alien vessel had accessed their systems and was broadcasting directly to their bridge. The voice that emerged was like music played on instruments made of crystal and wind. It spoke in perfect English, though with harmonics that suggested the speaker was not entirely physical. Primitive creatures of the third planet, the voice began, carrying undertones of vast superiority and ancient power. I am Supreme Archon Vexthar of the Ethereal Dominion. You stand before beings of divine origin, masters of technologies beyond your comprehension. We have ruled the stars since before your species learned to make fire. The image that appeared on their view screen was both beautiful and terrifying. Vexthar stood nearly 8 feet tall with a form that seemed to be made of living energy contained within a framework of crystalline bone. His face was angular and sharp, with eyes that held the cold light of distant stars. Robes of what looked like woven starlight flowed around him, and when he moved, reality itself seemed to bend slightly around his presence. For 10,000 years, we have brought order to the chaos of the galaxy, Vexthar continued. Lesser species kneel before our wisdom, or are reduced to cosmic dust. You will join the ranks of our servants, or you will cease to exist. There is no third option. Rachel felt her crew tense around her. This was not the peaceful first contact scenario they had hoped for. These beings, these ethereals, saw humanity as nothing more than potential slaves or obstacles to be removed. She stepped forward, drawing on every ounce of diplomatic training she had ever received. I am Captain Rachel Morrison, representing the human species, she said, keeping her voice steady and professional. We are explorers and scientists seeking knowledge and peaceful contact with other intelligent life. We mean no harm to your empire, but we will not simply surrender our freedom without understanding what you're asking of us. Vexthar's laughter was like the sound of crystal wind chimes in a hurricane. Understanding? You wish to understand beings whose technology transcends the physical laws you barely comprehend? Your largest vessels are metal shells powered by chemical reactions. Your weapons could not scratch our hull plating. Your entire species has existed for a cosmic instant, while we have shaped the destiny of galaxies. Dr. Fletcher stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his caution. Your technology is indeed impressive, he said. We would be honored to learn from your knowledge. Perhaps we could arrange some form of cultural and technological exchange? The ethereal's expression shifted to something that might have been amusement, if amusement could be carved from ice and starlight. Exchange? What could insects offer to gods? Your species has one value to us. You can serve as laborers in our industrial worlds, mining the resources necessary to fuel our expansion. In return, we will allow you to continue existing. Rachel felt anger building in her chest, but she forced herself to remain diplomatic. And if we refuse, then you will demonstrate to the galaxy what happens to species that defy the ethereal dominion. Your worlds will burn, your cities will become glass, your people will become a cautionary tale told by the survivors of other worlds who witness our power. The transmission showed images of devastated planets, their surfaces turned to molten rock, entire star systems reduced to fields of debris. The message was clear. This had happened before many times to species that had refused to submit to ethereal rule. You have 72 of your hours to make your decision, Vexthar declared. Gather your leaders, consult your primitive governments. At the end of this time, we will return for your answer. Choose wisely. The ethereal dominion has never been refused, and we do not intend to start with creatures who have barely learned to leave their birth planet. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the pioneer's dream in stunned silence. Rachel looked around at her crew, seeing the same mixture of fear and determination in their eyes that she felt in her own heart. They were facing beings whose technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. The smart thing would be to surrender, to accept servitude in exchange for survival. But humans had never been particularly good at doing the smart thing. Dr. Fletcher was already at his workstation, frantically analyzing the sensor data they had gathered during the encounter. Captain, he said, his voice tight with concentration. I'm detecting some interesting anomalies in their ship's energy signatures. Their technology may be advanced, but it's not beyond analysis. Everything follows physical laws, even if those laws are more complex than anything we currently understand. Rachel nodded, feeling a spark of hope kindle in her chest. What are you thinking, Doctor? I'm thinking that 72 hours might be enough time to learn something useful. These ethereals made one crucial mistake. They gave us time to study them instead of simply destroying us immediately. And if there's one thing humans excel at, it's learning from our mistakes and the mistakes of others. The communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Park, looked up from her station. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system. It looks like more ethereal ships are arriving. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. Rachel made her decision. Send a message to Earth, full priority transmission. Tell them what we've discovered and what we're facing. Then plot a course for the outer system. We're going to spend the next 72 hours learning everything we can about these so-called gods. As the Pioneer's dream accelerated away from the ethereal vessel, its sensors working overtime to analyze every scrap of data about the alien technology, Rachel couldn't help but smile grimly. The ethereals saw humans as primitive insects, barely worth their notice. They had no idea they were dealing with a species that had turned curiosity into an art form and problem-solving into a religion. The next 72 hours would determine whether humanity would kneel before gods or teach the galaxy that some insects bite back. How humans turn disasters into discoveries. The first attack came exactly 72 hours later, just as Supreme Archon Vexthur had promised. The human mining colony on Kepler 4442c had a population of 12,000 people, mostly families of miners and researchers who had been working to extract rare elements from the planet's rich crust. It should have been an easy target for the ethereal dominion. Commander Sarah Chen watched the attack unfold from the bridge of the evacuation ship Determination. Her vessel was one of 12 ships that had been rushed to the system when Earth received Captain Morrison's warning. The evacuation fleet was pitifully small compared to the task ahead of them, but they had one advantage the ethereals didn't expect. They had come prepared to learn. The ethereal warship descended through the atmosphere like a falling star made of liquid metal. Its hull shifted and flowed as it moved, adapting to atmospheric conditions with technology that made human science look like stone tools. Weapons ports opened along its surface, revealing arrays of crystalline cannons that began charging with energy that made the local electromagnetic sensors scream warnings. "All recording stations active," Sarah ordered. "I want every sensor we have focused on that ship. Full spectrum analysis of their weapons, shields, and propulsion systems. This attack is going to teach us how to fight back." Her crew worked with desperate efficiency. Lieutenant Marcus Torres monitored energy signatures while Dr. Elena Rodriguez analyzed the ship's structural composition. Every second of the attack was being recorded from multiple angles, with detailed analysis of how the ethereal technology functioned under combat conditions. The first weapon discharge was devastating. A beam of coherent energy lanced down from the alien ship, striking the colony's main administrative building. The structure simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that not even debris remained. But the human sensors caught everything: the energy frequency, the charging pattern, the way the weapon's power draw affected other ship systems. "Fascinating," Dr. Rodriguez muttered, her eyes glued to the readouts. "Their energy weapons operate on a resonance principle. They're not just applying brute force, they're finding the molecular resonance frequency of their targets and using that to tear matter apart at the atomic level." Sarah nodded grimly as she watched the ethereal ship systematically destroy the colony's infrastructure. Each building that died taught them something new about alien weapon systems. It was a horrible trade, but it was a trade humanity was prepared to make. The evacuation proceeded according to plan. Most of the colonists had been moved to underground shelters or loaded onto transport ships during the 3-day warning period. The ethereals were destroying empty buildings while 12,000 humans escaped with their lives and humanity gained priceless intelligence about their enemies. "Commander," Lieutenant Torres called out, "I'm detecting something odd about their shield systems. Look at this power distribution pattern." Sarah studied the data streaming across her screens. The ethereal ship's shields were incredibly powerful, capable of deflecting any weapon in the human arsenal. But the energy flow patterns showed something interesting. The shields weren't uniform. They had specific resonance frequencies, designed to counter known weapon types used by other galactic species. They've never fought humans before, Sarah realized. Their shields are optimized against the weapons they expect to face. Energy beams, particle accelerators, fusion warheads. But what about weapons they've never encountered? Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her analysis station with growing excitement. "Commander, I think I've found something. Their shield harmonics have a very specific frequency pattern. If we could generate a counter-resonance at exactly the right wavelength, we might be able to create destructive interference. The shields would cancel themselves out." It was a slim hope, but it was more than humanity had possessed an hour ago. The evacuation fleet retreated to a safe distance as the ethereal ship finished its demonstration of power. The colony was gone, but the colonists were alive and humanity had learned its first lesson in fighting gods. The pattern repeated across the system over the following days. Ethereal ships would arrive at human settlements, demand surrender, and then attack when their ultimatums were ignored. Each attack was carefully orchestrated to demonstrate their overwhelming superiority. Each attack was recorded and analyzed by human scientists who turned every defeat into data. On Kepler 442d, the Ethereals tested their atmospheric manipulation technology, using weather control systems to generate continent-spanning storms. The human weather monitoring stations recorded everything, learning how the aliens could reshape planetary climates with casual ease. At the asteroid mining facility in the system's belt, an ethereal ship demonstrated their matter manipulation capabilities, reshaping solid rock into perfect geometric forms with devices that seemed to ignore conservation of energy. Human sensors mapped every energy signature, every gravitational anomaly, every impossibility that the aliens took for granted. Captain Morrison and the Pioneer's Dream played a dangerous game of cat and mouse with ethereal patrols, using the research ship's advanced sensor arrays to gather detailed scans of alien technology. They discovered that ethereal ships regenerated damage using programmable matter, that their faster-than-light drives created temporary tears in spacetime, and that their crew members were not entirely biological but were instead hybrid beings of matter and energy. Back on Earth, the data streams were being processed by the greatest scientific minds humanity had ever produced. The International Space Consortium had activated Protocol 7, the emergency research directive that mobilized every available resource for the defense of the species. Universities, corporations, and government laboratories worked around the clock to decode the secrets of ethereal technology. Dr. Amanda Reeves stood in the main research facility beneath the Swiss Alps, watching as holographic displays showed the collected data from the Kepler system. The amount of information was staggering. In just 1 week, humanity had learned more about advanced physics than in the previous century of scientific development. Status report, she requested from her team leaders. Weapons Analysis Division has made significant progress, reported Dr. Chen Wei. We understand the basic principles behind their energy weapons. The resonance frequency targeting system has specific limitations. We can design armor that changes its molecular structure faster than their targeting systems can compensate. Propulsion analysis has even better news, added Dr. Yuki Tanaka. Their faster-than-light drives create predictable space-time distortions. We can detect incoming ships hours before they arrive, and we think we can disrupt their drives with precisely timed gravitational pulses. Dr. Reeves nodded, feeling hope building in her chest for the first time since the crisis began. What about manufacturing? Can we actually build weapons that use these principles? Already in progress, Dr. Wei replied. The orbital factories around Luna are being retooled. We should have the first prototype ships ready for testing within 6 weeks. It was an impossibly short timeline for developing revolutionary technology, but humanity was operating under impossible circumstances. Every factory on Earth and throughout the solar system had been converted to military production. Every scientist, engineer, and technician was working 18-hour days to turn theoretical discoveries into practical weapons. The Ethereals had made a crucial error. They had given humanity time to observe their technology instead of simply obliterating the species immediately. They had assumed that primitive beings could never comprehend divine science. They had forgotten that some species learn faster when their survival depends on it. In the Kepler system, the last human evacuation ships prepared to depart. Commander Chen's fleet had successfully rescued over 90% of the human population from the system's colonies. More importantly, they had gathered enough data to potentially level the playing field against seemingly omnipotent enemies. Final sensor sweep complete, Dr. Rodriguez reported. We have comprehensive analysis of 17 different ethereal ship types, complete electromagnetic and gravitational profiles, and detailed recordings of every weapon system they've used. Sarah nodded, looking back at the system that had been humanity's farthest outpost. The colonies were gone, but the people lived. And sometime soon, the Ethereals would learn that humanity's greatest strength had never been its technology or its weapons. It was humanity's refusal to accept that anything was impossible to understand. When human innovation shatters divine arrogance. 6 months after the evacuation of the Kepler system, the Earth Defense Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of ethereal territory. It was a sight that would have been impossible to imagine a year earlier. 47 human warships designed using principles stolen from gods and improved upon by engineers who refused to accept the word impossible. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the flagship Prometheus Rising, studying the tactical display that showed ethereal fleet positions throughout the local sector. His ship was a masterpiece of hybrid human-ethereal technology, built using manufacturing techniques that had been reverse-engineered from captured alien devices and powered by energy systems that turned theoretical physics into devastating reality. The ship looked nothing like the graceful vessels preferred by other species. Where ethereal ships flowed like living art and other alien craft emphasized elegant curves, human warships were angular and purposeful. Every surface served a function. Every system had been optimized for maximum effectiveness rather than aesthetic appeal. They were the products of a species that valued results over beauty. "Fleet status report," Marcus requested. "All ships ready for engagement," replied Captain Lisa Zhang, his tactical coordinator. "Adaptive shield systems are online. Resonance disruptor weapons are charged and ready. Counter-frequency generators are standing by." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of command settle on his shoulders. The Earth Defense Fleet represented humanity's first real attempt to fight back against the ethereal dominion. Every ship was experimental. Every weapon was untested in actual combat. They were about to discover whether human engineering could match divine arrogance. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of trying to match ethereal technology directly, human engineers had focused on exploiting the weaknesses they had discovered during those painful months of observation. Ethereal ships were designed to fight enemies who used conventional physics. Humans had learned to fight dirty. "Incoming transmission from the ethereal fleet," reported the communications officer. The image that appeared on the main screen was familiar. Supreme Archon Vexthor, his crystalline features showing irritation at this unexpected development. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship gleamed with technologies that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. "Impossible insects," Vexthor began, his voice carrying harmonic overtones of displeasure. "You dare to bring your primitive vessels into sovereign ethereal space? Your evacuation from the Kepler system was an act of mercy. This invasion will be met with the full power of our empire." Marcus stepped forward, meeting the alien leader's gaze directly. "Supreme Archon Vexthor, I am Admiral Marcus Webb of the Earth Defense Fleet. We're not here to invade your territory. We're here to negotiate new terms for human-ethereal relations." "Negotiate?" Vexthor's laughter was like breaking crystal. "You presume to negotiate with gods? Your species has had 6 months to consider our generous offer of servitude. Have you finally come to accept your proper place in the universal order?" "Actually," Marcus replied, "we've spent the last 6 months learning how your technology works. We've analyzed your weapons, studied your ships, and discovered some very interesting weaknesses in systems you consider perfected." For the first time since humanity had encountered him, Vexthor showed an expression other than supreme confidence. His energy form features shifted slightly, showing what might have been surprise or concern. "Impossible. Ethereal technology transcends physical laws that your species barely comprehends. You could study our vessels for centuries without understanding even basic principles." Marcus smiled grimly. "That's what every species probably thinks until they meet humans. We have a saying, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic until an engineer takes it apart to see how it works." The tactical display showed ethereal ships moving into attack formation. 38 crystal vessels, each one larger and more powerful than anything in the human fleet. By conventional calculations, the outcome should have been predetermined. The humans would be obliterated within minutes, but these calculations assumed conventional warfare. "All ships," Marcus broadcast to his fleet, "execute Protocol Prometheus. Show them what human engineering looks like when we're properly motivated." The human fleet scattered in all directions, breaking apart into small task forces that moved in patterns no ethereal computer could predict. Instead of maintaining formation and exchanging fire at long range, the human ships dove in close, exploiting their superior maneuverability to avoid the alien vessel's main weapons. The first surprise came when ethereal energy beams struck human ships and simply passed through them. The humans had developed adaptive hull plating that changed its molecular structure in real time, cycling through different configurations faster than ethereal targeting systems could compensate. Instead of absorbing the energy attacks, the hull plating redirected them harmlessly into space. "Impossible," Vexthor breathed, watching his supposedly invincible weapons fail to damage targets that should have been vaporized instantly. The second surprise came when human ships began returning fire. Instead of energy beams or conventional projectiles, they launched devices that looked like metallic spores. These resonance mines attached themselves to ethereal hulls and began broadcasting counter-frequencies specifically designed to disrupt crystal matrix structures. The effect was immediate and devastating. Ethereal ships that had been immune to damage for 10,000 years suddenly found their hulls developing stress fractures as their own crystal matrices worked against them. Weapons systems failed as resonance cascades disrupted delicate harmonic balances. How? Vexthar demanded, his ship shuddering as human weapons found weaknesses that should not have existed. How do you know frequencies that we ourselves do not understand? Because you never needed to understand them, Marcus replied. When you're invincible, you don't worry about vulnerabilities. But we've spent 6 months mapping every resonance pattern, every harmonic frequency, every structural weakness in your technology. You taught us how to kill gods. The battle continued for 8 hours. Human ships darted between their larger opponents like wolves hunting elk, striking at weak points and retreating before return fire could find them. The ethereal vessels, designed for long-range bombardment against conventional enemies, struggled to adapt to close-quarters combat against opponents who seemed to ignore the rules of physics. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now serving as the fleet's chief science officer, monitored the engagement from her position aboard the Prometheus Rising. Admiral, their shield harmonics are destabilizing. The resonance attacks are creating feedback loops in their defensive systems. Understood. All ships, target the lead vessel. Full resonance barrage. 20 human ships concentrated their fire on Vexthar's flagship. Hundreds of resonance disruptors attached themselves to the crystal hull, broadcasting frequencies that turned the ship's own defensive systems against it. The shield matrix collapsed, then regenerated, then collapsed again as the harmonic feedback loops grew stronger with each cycle. This cannot be happening, Vexthar said, his voice losing its divine certainty for the first time in millennia. We are the ethereal dominion. We have ruled the galaxy since before your star formed. We are gods among mortals. You were gods, Marcus corrected. Right up until you met a species that doesn't believe in gods. We believe in physics, engineering, and the principle that any problem can be solved if you understand it well enough. The flagship systems began failing as resonance cascades spread throughout its structure. Crystal matrices that had been stable for thousands of years suddenly became brittle and fractured. Weapons that had destroyed planets became inoperative as their harmonic frequencies turned chaotic. Surrender now, Marcus offered, and we can discuss terms for peaceful coexistence. Continue fighting, and we'll demonstrate what happens when humans decide that gods need to be replaced by something more reasonable. Vexthar looked around his bridge, seeing his ancient technology failing for the first time in his immortal existence. His crew of energy beings flickered with uncertainty as systems they had trusted for millennia proved vulnerable to attacks they had never imagined possible. You have made a grave error, he said finally. The ethereal dominion spans half the galaxy. Our empire will send fleets that will darken your skies. Let them come, Marcus replied. We'll be ready. And more importantly, we'll have taught every other species in the galaxy exactly how your technology works and how to beat it. How long do you think your empire will last when everyone knows that gods can be defeated by anyone willing to do the math? The implications hung in space between the two fleets. The ethereal dominion had ruled through technological superiority and the belief that their science was beyond comprehension. But humanity had shattered that illusion in a single battle. Once other species learned that ethereal technology could be understood and countered, the Empire would face rebellions on 1,000 worlds. What do you want? Vexthar asked, his voice carrying tones of defeat that had never been heard from an ethereal before. Simple, Marcus said. Recognition that humanity is your equal, not your property. Respect for our territorial sovereignty, and an end to the policy of forcing other species into slavery. The age of gods ruling mortals is over. Welcome to the age of intelligent species working together as equals. The Supreme Archon was silent for a long moment, processing concepts that were entirely foreign to ethereal culture. For 10,000 years, they had been the apex predators of the galaxy. Now they were being offered something they had never experienced: partnership with equals. This will require significant adjustments to imperial policy, Vexthar said finally. Then I suggest you start adjusting, Marcus replied. Because there are 46 other human ships out here, and each one is crewed by engineers who love solving impossible problems. The treaty negotiations took place aboard a neutral space station, with representatives from dozens of galactic species observing the proceedings. For the first time in recorded history, the ethereal dominions signed an agreement that recognized another species as technological equals. But more important than the treaty itself was the message it sent throughout the galaxy. Gods could be defeated. Divine technology could be understood and countered. The age of absolute rule by technological superiority was ending, and somewhere in human space, engineers were already working on their next impossible project. Faster-than-light travel that didn't require tearing holes in space-time, energy sources that made fusion reactors look like candles, and weapons that could reshape matter at the quantum level. After all, if they could teach gods humility, what else might be possible?